Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Mark Steiner. Great to have you with us. Here's a question. Can philosophy be turned into a deadly weapon? Well, the new commander-in-chief of the Israeli army, Aviv Kochavi, thinks so. The previous Israeli Minister of Defense, Avigdor Lieberman, resigned in November to protest the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, but still found time to install his favorite candidate to take over as chief of staff of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been serving as the acting Minister of Defense as well as being Prime Minister, of course approved his nomination. The man they appointed, as we said, is Lieutenant General Aviv Kochavi. People know him popularly as the first vegetarian head of the Israeli Defense Forces. But that's not what's important. The significance runs much deeper than that. Here's a speech he gave upon being appointed.
Now, in my turn, as I have undertaken the responsibility to lead the army, I vow to dedicate all my efforts for a critical and demanding approach, to strengthen the protective wall and to adapt it to the challenges of the present and of the future. In focus, increasing the capacity to hit the enemy and standing a deadlier, more effective and innovative army, which remains true to its purpose and to its uniqueness.
Kochavi is known for his study of French philosophers Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari. He applied their innovative concept of space to lead Israeli troops in 2002 through the walls of homes in Balata refugee camp in Nablus, avoiding possible ambushes but ruining the lives of thousands of Palestinian families. Something we will explore in this conversation with our guest. And our guest is Professor Eyal Weizman, who teaches spatial and visual cultures at Goldsmiths, University of London. He's the founding director of the Center for Research Architecture and the director of research agency Forensic Architecture. His recent book is Forensic Architecture, Violence at the Threshold of Detectability, which was published in 2017 by his own books. And you're welcome. Good to have you with us.
Yeah, good to be here.
Let's just start with this relationship, strange relationship you have with Aviv Kochavi, who apparently sued you because of the work you were writing. Tell us a bit about that background between the two of you and how that came about and what happened.
So back in 2006, I published an English version of an article that exposed the existence of something like an architectural school or theory spatial school for Israeli soldiers and officers who were then, at a time, dealing with relatively new field of military affair, and that is urban warfare. The military understood that in order to manage the complexities of urban warfare, the existence of many civilians, of media, the complex terrain physically, and the complex media sphere around urban warfare, that they needed tools in order to understand action in complex environments. And that school that was referred to at the time as the Operational Theory Research Institute educated many officers reading what we would consider left-wing theories coming from urban studies and sociology, and indeed also art theory and philosophy, like the theories of Gilles Deleuze and Guattari, mainly in their book 1,000 Plateaus. And that work and various of those terms were introduced in developing various military forms of maneuver. For example, Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari introduced the concept of the rhizomatric movement or maneuver, by which multiple independent or semi-independent actors work in perfect coordination within or swarm through space, in which the military units are not contiguous and tightly held, but operating in a sort of a wide diffusal. And that led to a very famous battle in those terms, that was the attack on the refugee camp of Balata by Nablus, in which these theories were actually manifested. One of the, or the leader of that, the commander of the paratrooper brigade that undertook that maneuver was the same man who is now the Israeli chief of staff. And what they have developed is a way in which a wide multiplicity of small groups would enter the refugee camp from different directions simultaneously, navigating through the built fabrics, more like worms are making their ways through apple in 3 dimensions, cutting walls through holes and through ceilings and floors and moving within it. When I have written about it in English, there was very positive response from the academic community, but the problem began when we wanted to translate that article into Hebrew. And at that moment, one of the most important left-wing theory journal in Israel, Theory and Criticism, accepted it for publication, but sent this essay to the Israeli army for a response, something that I considered to be a completely unacceptable move. Instead of a response, they have received a threat of illegal action on behalf of Kochavi, the current Israeli chief of staff, for a threat to withdraw that article from publication. What they complained about was several factual things to do with numbers of casualties. Of course, I stand by my sources.
So what was at the heart, though, of why they really why would they go after an academic article? What was it at the heart of it, in short, about why they went after you? But then they also backed off and dropped it at the end, correct?
Yeah, at the end they backed off because I think many in the Israeli left-wing academic community understood that this is an unacceptable move. First, it was unacceptable by the journal, by Theory of Criticism, to send it to the military, and then for the military to exercise any kind of pressure. They have their own means to do it. There is military censorship. There's all sort of means that they have. But to try to silence critique in an intellectual academic debate, as critical as it may be, and I'm extremely critical of the Israeli military human rights record and behavior in general in relation to the Israeli occupation or colonization of the West Bank and Gaza, they were trying to shut down this thing because it was, I think, inconvenient for them for these facts to be released. It was considered as embarrassing for them that these theories and these sources are actually being used for military purposes.
So last year, over 250 Palestinians were killed in Gaza by Israeli troops. Most of them were unarmed protesters. They were shot with sniper fire. And Palestinians, we know, have no army. The Israeli army has enough ammunition to kill as many Palestinians as it wants. So what does Aviv Khoshavi mean that he vows to make the Israeli military deadlier? How much deadlier can they be? And is there an implied criticism there of the former head of the military?
There is continuous debate, political debate within the Israeli right and extreme right about who can show to the Israeli electorate and to the Israeli public that they're tougher with the Palestinians, as if Israel has not been tough enough, as if there is no peace because Israel shows any weakness. I mean, this is obviously ridiculous, but this is a commodity that can circulate very well within the Israeli electorate. You see here now the alternative, the big alternative to Netanyahu, another former chief of staff, Gantz, has yesterday made a speech, and in fact his entire campaign is run on how many Arabs or how many terrorists he claimed to have killed, and this is in hundreds or thousands. I don't have the exact number here, but the fact that this is a currency in the Israeli public domain is extremely disturbing. That even the left or the alternative from the left to Benjamin Netanyahu needs to make inroads into the public by claiming to be deadly is absolutely frustrating for us in the left and anti-colonial movement in Israel.
So I'm very curious, as we close this out together, in your book, Hollow-Land, you kind of show that there were two factions inside the Israeli senior command, what you call kind of the more philosophical officers like Shimon Naver and others, versus more simple, straight-ahead officers like Moshe Yalan. In recent years, we've seen the latter becoming much more dominant in the Israeli army, calling for application of brute force rather than sophisticated colonial domination. So what do you think is at foot here? Does the appointment of Khoshavi portend something really different? I mean, where does he really stand in all this? What does it all really mean, and how deep is that divide?
You see, that's the structural problem of the Israeli occupation of the West Bank. They want to control that space without being there in the heart of the Palestinian areas. They need to develop forms of surveillance, forms of attack, and forms of maneuver that allow them to go in and out very fast so that they can claim there is no occupation. We are not in Bethlehem, we're not in Hebron, yes, but we're not in the other major Palestinian cities like Nablus, whereas effectively they exercise complete control over the lives of all Palestinian citizens between the river and the sea, whether it is through the population register, whether it is through surveillance, whether it is through their ability to strike and kill, in fact, anyone that they want to. So the idea is how to make the occupation invisible, how to develop new forms of control, of maneuver, and if you need to enlist to it new technologies and new critical theories, all the best, in order to live with that paradox. We need to go on. They want to go on dominating the Palestinians, but they want to go to say to the world, we are in fact outside of the population center. There is no occupation. There is some kind of situation that needs to be resolved.
But this will be really interesting to watch how this unfolds, and I can't help but think, just knowing a lot about him and who he is, what this could portend for the future in terms of the military and their tactics and what's going to happen with the Israelis and Palestinians. Eyal Weizman, it's been an honor to have you with us. I appreciate your work and appreciate you taking the time today with The Real News. We look forward to talking to you again as soon as we can.
Thank you very much.
And I'm Mark Steiner here for The Real News Network. Thank you all so much for being with us. Take care.